I was lying in the hospital after a heart attack, and my daughter called me at night. I'm getting married. The apartment and car are sold. Bye. Her betrayal hit harder than a heart attack, but I answered calmly. Okay, but you forgot one thing, she exclaimed. What do you mean? I laughed out loud because the apartment she had sold was actually my clever trap. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The antiseptic smell burned my nostrils as consciousness crept back. Heart monitor, beeping steadily. V-tube tugging at my left arm every time I shifted. 2 days since the attack, and sleep still came in fragments between nurse visits and chest pains. The phone's shrill ring cut through the silence like a blade. AM. Who calls a heart patient at this hour? My hand trembled, reaching for the receiver, IV line restricting my movement. The plastic felt cold against my ear. Dad, it's me. Mary's voice, not the warm tone I remembered from years past, but something distant. Clinical. Sweetheart, relief flooded through me despite the coldness. Are you okay? It's so late. I'm calling to let you know I'm getting married tomorrow. The words hit harder than the heart attack had. I struggled to sit up straighter, monitor beeping faster. Married? Tomorrow? But Mary, you never said? In Las Vegas. Leo and I decided not to wait. Her tone remained flat, businesslike. The apartment and car are sold. The money will help with the wedding and honeymoon. My apartment, the one I bought for her, future, put in my name as security. The car I gifted her for graduation, sold. Sold? My voice came out weaker than intended. But honey, we need to talk about... There's nothing to discuss. I'm 28, Dad. I can make my own decisions. Each word felt calculated, rehearsed. Leo says you've been too controlling, keeping me dependent. This is my chance for independence. Leo says, of course. The heart monitor's rhythm quickened. Not from the medical condition this time, but from something deeper. Something transforming inside my chest. Mary, please. After everything we've been through since Mom died, I need to focus on my new life now. The dismissal in her voice cut deep. Leo's right. You've held me back long enough. I'm sorry about your heart, but I can't let guilt control my choices anymore. 15 years. 15 years since Sarah passed. Since I devoted everything to this daughter, bought her the apartment, paid for college, supported her dreams, while my own slowly died in corporate law offices, until my heart couldn't take the stress anymore. Goodbye, Dad. Fine. The word came out steadier than I felt. But you forgot one thing. Silence stretched across the line. Then irritation crept into her voice. What do you mean? Something inside me had shifted during this conversation. The loving father she remembered was transforming into someone she didn't know existed, someone who'd spent 30 years navigating corporate contracts and legal loopholes. A low laugh escaped my throat, surprising us both. You'll find out soon enough. Good luck with your wedding, sweetheart. I hung up before she could respond. The room fell silent except for the heart monitor's steady rhythm and distant sounds of the night shift. My pulse had stabilized, but something fundamental had changed. I stared at the small frame photo on the bedside table. Mary at her college graduation, radiant between Sarah and me. 3 years ago, when she still called me Daddy and meant it, the photograph trembled in my hands. Mary at 25, graduation day, her arm wrapped around mine while Sarah's memory seemed to hover between us. 3 years ago, she still smiled like that, still called me Daddy when she was excited. 15 years, that's how long I'd been doing this alone. Sarah's voice echoed from the deepest places of memory. Promise me you'll take care of our girl. She'll need you more than ever. The cancer ward smelled like disinfectant and dying dreams, but I'd held her hand and sworn an oath that shaped every decision since. I promise. She'll never want for anything. Mary had been 13 then, sobbing into my shoulder at the funeral, while I wondered how to raise a teenage daughter alone. Corporate law had taught me to read contracts, not broken hearts. But love makes you learn fast. Those college years blurred together in a beautiful haze of sacrifice. Tuition checks that emptied my retirement fund. Late-night phone calls about exams and boys and dreams that seemed so important at 18. Dad, I don't know how to thank you for everything. Her voice had been warm then, grateful. Real. Just be happy, sweetheart. That's all the thanks I need. I remembered the apartment hunt 5 years ago, walking through dozens of properties in safe neighborhoods, imagining Mary coming home to her own space. The day I handed her the keys, watching her spin around that empty living room like she was dancing with possibility itself. I can't believe this is really mine. She'd hugged me so tight my ribs ached. Pure joy, the kind that makes sacrifice feel like privilege. You deserve it. Your mother would be so proud. The legal paperwork had been carefully structured, a trust arrangement that protected both of us. Though Mary never needed to understand those details, she was happy. That was enough. But something changed 8 months ago. The first mention of Leo's name came during a Sunday dinner that felt different, distant. I've met someone special, Dad. The excitement in her voice had seemed genuine then, infectious even. I'd been happy for her, ready to welcome another person into our small family. If only I'd known what Leo Morrison really wanted. Phone calls became shorter. Sunday dinners turned into quick coffee meetings, then excuses about being busy. Mary's laughter grew rare, replaced by defensive silences whenever I asked about her life. Dad, you need to stop being so involved in my life. That conversation 2 months ago still stung. We'd been sitting in her favorite restaurant, the one where we'd celebrated every milestone since high school. I just want what's best for you. Leo thinks you're too controlling, Leo thinks. When had my daughter's thoughts become someone else's words? The heart monitor's rhythm quickened as memories collided with tonight's betrayal. My chest tightened, not from the medical condition, but from understanding how completely I'd lost her. The daughter who once thanked me for everything had just sold my gifts to fund her escape from me. That July evening 8 months ago started with such promise. Mary had chosen Bella Vista for dinner, the upscale Italian place where we'd celebrated her college acceptance years before. She was practically glowing when I walked in, seated at our usual corner booth with a man I'd never seen. Dad, this is Leo Morrison. Leo, my father Dale Rivera. Leo stood to shake hands, tall, well-dressed, confident in that particular way that immediately triggered my courtroom instincts. His grip was firm, lasting just a moment too long, his blue eyes studying my face like he was memorizing it. Mr. Rivera, Mary's told me so much about you, the successful attorney who raised an amazing daughter single-handedly. Smooth voice, practiced smile. Too perfect. Please call me Dale. And Mary did most of the work herself? Modest and wise, I can see where Mary gets her best qualities. Mary beamed, reaching for Leo's hand across the white tablecloth. Isn't he sweet, Dad? Sweet wasn't the word I'd have chosen. Calculating, maybe. Leo's expensive watch caught the candlelight, a Rolex that didn't match his vague explanation of working in consulting. His suit was tailored, his shoes Italian leather. Either consulting paid incredibly well, or Leo had other sources of income. What line of work are you in exactly? I asked, settling into my seat. I help people optimize their opportunities. Strategic planning, you might say. Mary jumped in before I could press further. Leo's being modest. He's brilliant with strategy and investments. That wasn't really an answer, but Mary's enthusiasm made it difficult to push. Leo seemed to sense my skepticism, leaning forward with practiced sincerity. Dale, you've done an incredible job with Mary. I have to ask, though, don't you think you've been almost too generous? Some people might take advantage of such kindness. The comment hit like a calculated punch. Was he suggesting Mary was taking advantage of me, or was this some kind of test? Mary's apartment is beautiful, by the way, Leo continued smoothly. You have excellent taste in real estate investments. There it was, interest in the apartment. My lawyer brain started cataloging red flags. Mary squeezed Leo's arm proudly. Dad found the perfect place for me. I'm so lucky. You deserve everything good in life, Leo murmured, but his eyes remained fixed on me. Your father's very generous. Smart investments in the right properties. The waiter approached, and Leo insisted on ordering an expensive bottle of wine. When the check came, he made the proper protest about paying, but his relief when I picked up the tab was obvious. A man with a Rolex who couldn't afford dinner. Walking to the parking lot afterward, I noticed Leo's car, a BMW that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. The pieces didn't fit together, and 30 years of legal practice had taught me that inconsistencies usually meant Someone was lying. "It was wonderful meeting you, Dale," Leo said, that perfect smile never wavering. "I hope we'll be seeing a lot more of each other." As I drove home that night, every instinct I'd honed in decades of depositions and cross-examinations screamed warnings. But Mary was happy, glowing with that special light that only comes from being in love. Tuesday morning arrived with discharge papers and a transformation I hadn't anticipated. The nurse wheeled me to the hospital entrance, chattering about rest and follow-up appointments, but my mind was already miles ahead. Sitting in the taxi, watching familiar San Diego streets pass by, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the sharp focus that once made me successful in corporate law. My house in Hillcrest looked smaller than I remembered. 4 days in the hospital had given me perspective on the life I'd been living. Quiet, orderly, and ultimately meaningless without Mary. Now it would serve a different purpose. The first hour back involved the mundane, unpacking medications, checking mail, making coffee with hands that still trembled slightly. But by noon I'd cleared my dining room table and spread out 15 years of legal documents. Like evidence in a case, the apartment purchase papers told the story clearly. Mary Rivera was listed as beneficiary, but the property ownership remained in the Dale Rivera Family Trust. She had no legal right to sell anything. Leo had convinced her to commit fraud, possibly without her realizing it. I reached for my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized decades ago. Marcus Porter, Investigations. "Marcus, it's Dale Rivera. I need a complete background check on someone. This is personal, but I'm prepared for whatever it costs." A pause. "Dale Rivera, haven't heard from you in years. What's the situation?" "My daughter's involved with someone who's not what he appears to be. I need facts, not suspicions." Marcus had worked with my law firm on dozens of cases. Divorce settlements, corporate espionage, insurance fraud. If anyone could uncover Leo's secrets, it was him. "Give me everything you know about this guy." I dictated Leo's full name, the BMW license plate I'd memorized, Mary's address where he'd been spending time. Marcus took notes with professional efficiency. Preliminary report in 48 hours. Full workup within a week. "My rates haven't changed since you retired." "Money's not an issue. I want to know everything. Employment history, financial records, previous relationships, legal troubles, everything." After hanging up, I organized my space with the methodical precision that had once organized complex corporate transactions. Legal pads, laptop, phone charger, a coffee cup that would be refilled many times. My dining room was becoming a war room. By 3 o'clock, Marcus called back. "Dale, I've got preliminary findings on your Leo Morrison. You're not going to like this." I gripped the phone tighter. "Tell me." "Employment history is sketchy at best. Claims to work in consulting, but I can't verify any actual clients. Lives in a luxury apartment complex that runs about $4,000 a month. Drives a BMW that's financed to the limit." "How does he afford it?" "That's the concerning part. I found a pattern. 3 different women in the past 5 years, all ended relationships around the time their financial situations got complicated. 2 filed restraining orders that were later dropped. 1 moved to another state." My chest tightened, but not from the heart condition. "What kind of complications?" "Credit problems, unauthorized charges, missing savings. Nothing that stuck legally, but the pattern's clear. This guy's a professional." "Keep digging. I need everything you can find." Setting down the phone, I stared at the trust documents spread across my table. Mary thought she'd gained independence by selling the apartment. Instead, she'd handed Leo exactly what he wanted. Access to what he believed was easy money. But Leo had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated the man whose daughter he was using. Calf? Luna buzzed with afternoon energy when I arrived at 2 o'clock, choosing a corner table with clear sight lines to both entrance and exit, old habits from depositions, control the environment, anticipate reactions, document everything. The manila folder beside my coffee cup contained 15 years of legal paperwork that would shatter Mary's confidence. She walked in 10 minutes late, wedding ring catching the light like a declaration of war. Designer handbag, expensive shoes, the confident stride of someone who believed she'd won. The transformation from my loving daughter to this stranger still took my breath away. "Thank you for coming, Mary. I wasn't sure you would." She slid into the chair across from me, back rigid. I'm here to tell you to stop interfering in my life. Leo and I are married now. Married. The word hung between us like a weapon. About that, and about the apartment sale. We need to discuss some legal issues. There are no legal issues. Her voice carried Leo's arrogance. Everything's been handled properly. I opened the folder with deliberate precision, removing documents that had been filed away since she was 23. Mary, I need to show you something. These are the original papers from when I bought your apartment. I don't care about old paperwork. I sold it. It's done. Look at the ownership structure. I turned the deed toward her, my finger pointing to specific language. See this section about trust beneficiary versus legal ownership? Mary leaned forward reluctantly, scanning text she'd never bothered to read. What are you talking about? The apartment was never legally yours to sell. It's held in the Dale Rivera Family Trust, with me as trustee and you as beneficiary. You can live there, but you cannot sell it without my written consent. The color drained from her face. That's impossible. I have the deed. You have a beneficiary document, not an ownership deed. There's a significant legal difference. I pulled out additional paperwork. Trust establishment documents, legal correspondence, title insurance policies. The sale you completed was legally void. Her hands shook as she examined the papers. You're lying. Leo checked all the paperwork. Leo isn't a lawyer. He wouldn't recognize trust structures or understand property law. Each word was measured. Professional. This arrangement is completely legal and fairly common in estate planning. This can't be right. Mary's voice cracked. I signed papers. Money changed hands. The buyers will discover the title defect within weeks. Their lawyers will demand their money back. The escrow company will reverse the transaction. She stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. Why didn't you tell me about this trust thing? Because I trusted you to discuss major financial decisions with me before acting. I established this structure to protect your interests, not to control you. Mary's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly. Probably Leo wondering about our meeting. Leo says you've been manipulating me my whole life. Leo says many things. I gathered the papers methodically. Has he shown you documentation of his consulting business? Client contracts? Tax returns? That's none of your business. Everything about Leo Morrison is my business now. The professional mask slipped just enough to let her see the fury underneath. You gave a stranger access to what he believed was $500,000 in real estate equity. He's my husband. He's a fraud investigator's dream case. I closed the folder. Decision made. But you'll figure that out soon enough. Mary stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor. I won't let you destroy my marriage. I don't need to destroy anything, sweetheart. Leo's already doing that himself. She stormed toward the exit and then turned back. What happens now? Now you go home and tell your husband that his payday just evaporated. Then we'll see what kind of man you really married. The next morning I organized my dining room like a war room. Trust documents in chronological order. Property records cross-referenced. Communication histories with Mary documented and dated. 30 years of legal practice had taught me that preparation wins battles, not passion. My phone rang at 10:30. Marcus Porter, the detective. Dale, I've got more on your Leo Morrison. You're going to want to hear this sitting down. I'm listening. Patterns worse than I initially reported. 5 women over 8 years, not 3. 2 restraining orders. 3 civil suits settled quietly. 1 bankruptcy filing that mysteriously disappeared. This guy's a professional. What kind of professional? The kind who researches targets carefully. Older women, recent widows, financially comfortable but emotionally vulnerable. He's got a playbook. I made notes methodically. Current financial status. Underwater on everything. BMW lease about to default. Apartment rent 3 months behind. Credit cards maxed. He needed Mary's apartment money badly. Needed. Past tense. Leo was about to discover his payday had evaporated. By noon, Mary was calling. Dad, Leo says you can't legally do this. He's hiring a lawyer. Of course he is. I kept my voice neutral. Mary, has Leo shown you his tax returns, business license, any documentation of his consulting work? Silence, then defensive. We're married. I don't need to see his papers. You just learned you don't legally own the apartment you thought you sold. Maybe it's time to ask some questions. She hung up. At 3 o'clock, a certified letter arrived. Demand for immediate cessation of elder abuse and fraudulent property claims. Screamed the letterhead from a law office I'd never heard of. The grammar was poor, the legal theory non-existent, but the aggression was impressive. Leo's attorney, and I use the term loosely, demanded I immediately cease all harassment of Mr. Morrison's wife and provide documentation proving legal right to property illegally claimed through manipulation of vulnerable family member. I read it twice, then called Richard Maxwell, my former law partner. Richard, someone's challenging my family trust documentation. Can you review something? Dale, your trust work was always bulletproof. What's the concern? I faxed the demand letter. Richard called back in 10 minutes, laughing. This guy got his law degree from a cereal box. Elder abuse? With a trust you established 5 years ago when you were mentally sharp and independently represented? Property manipulation? You've got title insurance and bank records going back decades. So I should be worried. Only about wasting postage on your response. But I wasn't just responding to Leo's pathetic legal threat. I was preparing for war. That evening, I drafted my reply with surgical precision. Every claim in Leo's letter was dissected and demolished, with citations to relevant case law. I included copies of the original trust documents, notarized and witnessed. Bank records showing the apartment purchase. Title: Insurance confirming clear ownership transfer to the trust. Then I added a paragraph that would keep Leo awake at night. Please advise your client that any further frivolous legal actions will result in full investigation of his background, financial status, and history with other vulnerable women. We have obtained preliminary information suggesting patterns of predatory behavior that may interest law enforcement. I sealed the letter at midnight, satisfied. Leo had made his first move, amateur hour. Marcus called at 10 Friday morning with the tone of a detective who'd struck gold. Dale, you need to sit down for this. Leo Morrison isn't just a con artist, he's a professional. 2 previous marriages, both ending the same way your daughter's heading. I pulled out a legal pad, ready to document everything. Give me names and dates. Amanda Porter, married March 2018, divorced February 2019. Financial advisor, lost $180,000. Jennifer Walsh, married June 2020, divorced September 2022. Real estate agent, lost $250,000 plus her rental property. My pen moved steadily across the page. Same pattern? Identical? Whirlwind romance, rushed marriage, gradual access to finances, then disappearance when the money runs out. Both women filed civil suits. Both settled quietly rather than face public humiliation. Are they willing to testify? Already contacted them. They want Leo stopped before he does it again. 3 hours later, I spread the evidence across my dining room table, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that finally made sense. Marriage certificates, financial records, witness statements from 2 broken women who'd fallen for the same charming smile that had captivated my daughter. At 2 o'clock, I called Mary. We need to meet. I have information about Leo that changes everything. More legal attacks? I'm tired of this war you've started. This isn't about law, Mary. It's about Leo's history, his previous marriages. Silence. Then carefully. Leo was never married before. Calf, Luna. 1 hour. Bring an open mind. She arrived reluctant and defensive, sliding into the same chair she'd occupied during our last confrontation. The manila folder between us looked innocent enough, but its contents would demolish everything she believed about her husband. Mary, I need you to look at these documents. They're difficult, but they're real. More property papers, more legal tricks. I opened the folder and placed the first marriage certificate on the table. Amanda Porter and Leo Morrison, married March 15th, 2018. Mary stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. This is fake. You had someone create false papers. The second certificate joined the first. Jennifer Walsh and Leo Morrison, married June 3rd, 2020. Her face went pale. That's impossible. Leo told me I was his first serious relationship since college. Read Amanda's statement. I handed her a typed page. Notice anything familiar about how Leo courted her? Mary's hands trembled as she read. I watched her expression change from disbelief to recognition to growing horror. He said the same things to her, word for word, the exact same promises about building a future together. Now read Jennifer's account. This time, Mary's reaction was physical. She pushed back from the table, shaking her head. No, this can't be real. Leo loves me. Leo loved Amanda's financial portfolio, he loved Jennifer's real estate investments, and he loved what he thought was your $500,000 apartment. You're lying. But her voice lacked conviction now. I spread out the financial records, the timeline comparisons, the pattern analysis Marcus had prepared. Amanda lost her life savings. Jennifer had to declare bankruptcy. Both relationships lasted exactly the same time frame, 18 months from meeting to financial devastation. Mary sat frozen, staring at evidence that couldn't be denied. How long have we been together? 8 months, right on schedule for his usual timeline. She looked up at me with eyes that finally understood. I'm not his wife, I'm his third victim. Her phone buzzed. Leo's name appeared on the screen. Don't answer it, I said quietly. 3 days later, I stood outside the Chapel of Eternal Love on the Las Vegas Strip, holding a manila folder that would end Leo Morrison's career as a predator. Marcus had tracked them here through credit card records, Leo's final desperate gambit to legitimize his access to what he still believed was Mary's money. The chapel reeked of artificial romance, plastic flowers, velvet drapes, and the lingering scent of too many rushed weddings. 20 guests filled the small space, mostly Leo's business associates, who had no idea they were witnessing fraud in real time. Mary looked beautiful in her wedding dress, but her eyes held the hollow look of someone acting against their better judgment. Leo stood at the altar in an expensive suit he couldn't afford, eager to complete what he thought would be his biggest score. The officiant cleared his throat. If anyone has reason why these two should not be wed, speak now, or forever. Hold your peace. I stepped forward from the back of the chapel. I have information this bride needs before making this commitment. The chapel fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Leo's face went white, then flushed with rage. This is a private ceremony, Leo snarled. You weren't invited. Mary, before you sign legal documents, you should know exactly who you're signing with. I walked calmly down the aisle, my folder held like a weapon. Mary stared at me with a mixture of anger and something that might have been relief. Dad, we already discussed this. Leo explained everything. Did he explain Amanda Porter? I opened the folder and placed the first marriage certificate on the altar. Married to Leo Morrison, March 2018. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Leo lunged forward, trying to grab the document. Those are fabricated. He's trying to destroy us. I calmly placed the second certificate beside the first. Jennifer Walsh, married to Leo Morrison, June 2020. Mary's bouquet trembled in her hands. Leo, you said these marriages never happened. I can explain everything privately, Leo said, his charm cracking. Don't let him manipulate you. But I was already spreading the financial records across the altar, like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Amanda lost $180,000. Jennifer lost $250,000. Both women trusted Leo with their life savings. The wedding guests pressed closer, examining the documents. Leo's business associates were quietly backing toward the exits. Mary, I said gently, read Jennifer's statement. Notice anything familiar about how Leo courted her? With shaking hands, Mary picked up the typed page. As she read, her face crumbled. He used the same words, the exact same promises he made to me. Don't listen to him. Leo grabbed Mary's arm. We can leave right now. Start fresh somewhere else. But Mary was staring at the marriage certificates, the financial records, the pattern that could no longer be denied. You told me I was your first real love. You are. These women meant nothing. Then why did you steal from them? The question hung in the air like an indictment. Leo's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the desperate predator underneath. I never stole anything. They gave me money, willingly. The same way I was going to give you money from selling the apartment? That's different. We're married. What's yours is mine. Mary slowly removed her wedding ring, holding it like it had turned to poison. We're not married yet, and we're not going to be. She walked away from the altar, still in her wedding dress but no longer a bride. Leo called after her, his voice rising to a shout, but she didn't look back. As I followed Mary toward the chapel exit, I heard Leo behind us, still trying to salvage his scheme. But his audience was gone, his credibility destroyed, his perfect plan reduced to public humiliation. 2 days after Las Vegas, my phone rang at 10 in the morning. Mary's name on the screen. The first time she'd called me since the chapel confrontation. Dad? Her voice sounded small, uncertain. I owe you an apology. I set down my coffee, giving her my complete attention. Mary, you don't owe me anything. I'm just glad you're safe. How did you know? From the very beginning, how did you see through Leo when I couldn't? Experience, sweetheart. 30 years of reading people in depositions, and a father's instinct to protect his daughter. There was silence, then a shaky breath. I feel so stupid. All those red flags I ignored because I wanted to believe he loved me. You're not stupid. Leo's a professional. He's done this before, and he'll try to do it again unless we stop him. That afternoon, I activated the most powerful weapon in my arsenal, my professional network. 3 decades of legal relationships, former colleagues now sitting as judges, partners in major firms, prosecutors who owed me favors. Richard Maxwell took my first call. Richard, I need Leo Morrison investigated from every possible angle. Business licenses, tax records, credit history, employment verification, everything. Dale, after seeing those documents you provided, we're already moving. The State Business Licensing Board opened an investigation yesterday. His consulting business? Complete fabrication. No registered clients. No business address. No valid credentials. What about criminal charges? Building the case now. 3 victims willing to testify. Documented financial fraud patterns. The district attorney's interested. By evening, the systematic destruction of Leo Morrison was underway. Credit agencies received detailed fraud reports. Banking relationships were being scrutinized. Civil lawsuit preparations were being filed by Amanda and Jennifer's attorneys. Meanwhile, Leo was becoming increasingly desperate. Mary showed me the texts, the voicemails, the escalating attempts to maintain control. Mary, don't let him turn you against me. We can still work this out. Work what out, Leo? She'd responded. The lies, the other wives, the theft? His reply had grown more aggressive. Those documents were fabricated. Your father paid people to create false evidence? Stop. Just stop calling me. But Leo wasn't stopping. Marcus, my detective, reported that Leo had been seen outside Mary's apartment building, testing door handles, asking neighbors about her schedule. He's escalating, Marcus warned during our evening call. Financial pressures mounting. His BMW got repossessed today, and he's 3 months behind on rent. Desperate people do desperate things. I looked out my window at the quiet Hillcrest neighborhood where I'd lived peacefully for 20 years. That peace was about to end. What kind of desperate things? Hard to say. But men like Leo don't just disappear quietly. They need to blame someone for their failures, and right now, you're the target. Mary had changed her locks, removed Leo from any shared accounts, and started therapy to process the psychological manipulation she'd endured. She was reclaiming her life piece by piece, but healing takes time. Leo, meanwhile, was running out of both time and options. That night, my phone rang again. Unknown number, but I recognized Leo's voice immediately. You destroyed my life, old man. You destroyed your own life. I just exposed it. Mary was mine. The apartment was mine. Everything was mine until you interfered. Mary was never yours, Leo. She was your victim, and the apartment was always mine. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Leo spoke again, his voice carried a coldness that made me reach for the security system remote. This isn't over, Dale. Oh, not by a long shot. April 1st arrived with news that should have been triumphant. Richard called at 9 in the morning with an update on our systematic campaign against Leo Morrison. Dale, the Business Licensing Board, is investigating. His consulting claims are complete fabrication. No registered clients, no business address, no valid credentials whatsoever. Excellent. What about the criminal referral? That's where things get complicated. Richard's tone shifted. Leo hired competent counsel. Very competent. Daniel Reeves from Morrison & Associates. My confidence wavered. Reeves had a reputation for getting fraud charges dismissed on technicalities. How competent? The kind who finds loopholes in airtight cases. They're challenging everything procedurally. Evidence chain, jurisdiction issues, statute of limitations questions. This could drag on for months. Months. I'd expected weeks. By afternoon, worse news arrived. Marcus, my detective, called with information that made my stomach clench. Dale, we have a problem. Leo's been visiting Mary. That's impossible. She blocked his calls, changed her locks. He's convincing, Dale. Really convincing. My surveillance shows 2 meetings this week. Long conversations. She's listening to him. I drove to Mary's apartment immediately, using my emergency key. She was sitting at her kitchen table, looking tired and confused. Mary, we need to talk. Dad, you're destroying Leo out of spite, not protection. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Mary, he's manipulating you again. Can't you see what he's doing? What I see is you using your power to hurt someone I care about. Someone who stole from 2 other women and planned to steal from you. That's your interpretation. Leo explained everything. Explained the word that had preceded every lie Leo had ever told her. What did he explain exactly? Mary's eyes flashed with defensive anger. That those women were bitter about relationships that didn't work out. That you paid them to lie about him. That you're so obsessed with controlling me that you'll destroy anyone who threatens that control. Leo's psychological manipulation was masterful. He'd taken every truth about his crimes and inverted it into evidence of my persecution. Worse, he'd exploited Mary's deepest fear, that I was controlling rather than protective. Mary, look at the evidence, the marriage certificates, the financial records, the pattern. Evidence can be interpreted many ways. You have money and connections. Leo has nothing but the truth. I stared at my daughter and realized Leo had won this round completely. Every legal victory I'd achieved had been reframed as proof of my wealth and power being used unfairly. My protection had become control. My evidence had become manipulation. My love had become possession. That evening, Richard called with the final blow. Dale. Reeves filed a motion claiming selective prosecution. He's arguing that Leo's being unfairly targeted because of your influence. Worse, they're threatening to subpoena your communications with law enforcement, claiming you're orchestrating a personal vendetta disguised as justice. Can they do that? If they convince a judge that this is harassment rather than legitimate prosecution, yes. And honestly, your involvement makes that argument stronger. I sat in my home office surrounded by 30 years of legal experience and realized I'd made a fundamental error. I'd treated Leo like an amateur when he was actually a professional, not just at fraud, but at survival. While I'd been mobilizing my network, he'd been studying the system's weaknesses. While I'd been building a case, he'd been rebuilding Mary's psychological dependence. My phone buzzed, a text from Mary. Dad, I need some space to figure things out. Please don't contact me for a while. Space, the one thing that would give Leo unlimited access to continue his psychological reconstruction of her reality. I'd won the first battle through superior resources and professional connections. But Leo had won the war by understanding that Mary was the only prize that mattered, and the only battlefield where victory was truly possible. 4 days of silence from Mary had taught me something crucial about warfare. Sometimes retreat is the only path to victory. Saturday morning found me in a downtown coffee shop, waiting for a woman I'd never met, but who held the key to saving my daughter. Jennifer Walsh arrived precisely at 10, professional in a way that spoke of someone who'd rebuilt her life methodically. Tall, confident, carrying a leather portfolio that suggested success, hard-won after devastating loss. Mr. Rivera, I'm Jennifer Walsh. Dale, please. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes sharp with the intelligence Leo had once exploited. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask about Leo Morrison. I want him stopped. Tell me exactly how he operated. Every detail matters. Jennifer opened her portfolio, revealing documents organized with business-like precision. Leo is methodical. He researches targets carefully. Successful women with emotional vulnerabilities. Recent divorce, death in family, professional isolation. I thought of Mary after Sarah's death, how vulnerable 13-year-old grief had shaped her need for approval. He told me his ex-wife had destroyed him financially, Jennifer continued, made me feel like I was rescuing him with my love and stability. Mary mentioned Leo had financial problems from past relationships. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is the joint account for our future together. Stage 3 is the urgent business opportunity that requires immediate investment. She spread bank statements across the table, transfers totaling $250,000 over 18 months. How did you finally realize what was happening? When I caught him researching my rental property values and calculating equity withdrawal possibilities. Jennifer's voice hardened. He wasn't planning our future. He was appraising my assets. What happened when you confronted him? He turned it around, made me feel guilty for not trusting him, for being suspicious of our love. That's his greatest skill, making victims blame themselves for his crimes. The pattern was breathtakingly familiar. Leo hadn't just stolen Mary's money, he'd stolen her ability to trust her own judgment. Jennifer, I need to ask something difficult. Is Leo planning to disappear? Her face went pale. Has he mentioned business opportunities in other states? Consulting work that requires travel? My stomach dropped. Mary said something about Leo considering expansion to Nevada. That's how he left me. Sudden business trip that became permanent relocation. By the time I realized what happened, he'd transferred everything to offshore accounts. How long before he typically runs? 18 months maximum, but if pressured, he can accelerate. How long has he been with your daughter? 8 months. Then you have days, not weeks. When pressure mounts, Leo doesn't just disappear. He takes everything he can carry. I spent the afternoon documenting Jennifer's testimony, cross-referencing her timeline with Mary's relationship progression. The parallels were terrifying. Every romantic gesture, every promise, every financial request followed Leo's established playbook exactly. At 4 o'clock, Jennifer made a call that changed everything. Amanda, it's Jennifer Walsh. I'm with another father whose daughter is involved with Leo Morrison. She handed me the phone. Mr. Rivera, Amanda's voice was steady but sad. I lost everything to Leo. My savings, my house, my ability to trust anyone. Don't let him do that to your daughter. Will you help me stop him? I've been ready to testify for 3 years. Just tell me when and where. By evening, I had what prosecutors call a pattern case. Multiple victims, identical methods, documented financial crimes, and witnesses willing to testify. More importantly, I had something Leo couldn't manipulate or discredit, the voices of women who'd survived him and wanted justice. But time was running out. Jennifer's timeline analysis suggested Leo would move within days. Mary was completely under his influence, believing she was protecting him from my persecution. I looked at the evidence spread across my dining room table. Not just documents this time, but the testimonies of 2 women whose lives Leo had destroyed. Tomorrow I would have to choose between respecting Mary's request for space and saving her from the same fate. The phone rang. Marcus, my detective. Dale, we have a problem. Leo's been making unusual financial moves, large cash withdrawals, travel bookings. It looks like he's preparing to run. I glanced at the clock. 7 p.m. If Leo was following his established pattern, Mary had less than 48 hours before she woke up to find her life savings gone and her husband vanished. Monday morning arrived with the sound of car doors slamming in the parking lot below. I watched from my office window as Detective Marcus Porter led 2 uniformed officers toward Mary's apartment building. In my hand, I held the warrant we'd obtained based on Jennifer's testimony and Amanda's corroborating evidence. The time for subtle approaches had ended. I met them at Mary's door, carrying the complete evidence file, bank records, marriage certificates, witness statements from 2 women whose lives Leo had destroyed. Behind me, Jennifer Walsh stepped out of her rental car, ready to face the man who'd stolen her future. My key still worked. Mary's shocked face appeared as we entered, confusion turning to horror as she saw the police officers. Dad, what's happening? Leo said you were trying to destroy us. Mary, I need you to listen to Jennifer. She has something important to tell you. Leo emerged from the bedroom, already dressed, a packed suitcase barely visible behind him. His confident mask slipped when he saw Jennifer. This is harassment, he said, but his voice carried the tremor of a man whose world was collapsing. You can't just break into our home with police. Leo Morrison, Detective Porter announced, you're under arrest for fraud in the first degree, theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Leo made one final attempt at manipulation. Mary, you have to believe me. I love you more than anything. Don't let them turn you against me. Jennifer stepped forward, holding the file of evidence we'd compiled. Mary, Leo did the same things to me he's done to you. Identical words, identical promises. That's impossible, Mary whispered, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Leo loves me. We're married. He married me too. Jennifer's voice was steady, professional. Then he disappeared with $250,000 of my money. I watched Mary's face as Jennifer spread the evidence across the kitchen table. Bank statements showing Leo's debts. Marriage certificates proving his bigamy. Recorded conversations where Leo used the exact same romantic phrases with 3 different women. Leo, is it true? Mary's voice broke. Were you planning to leave with my money? Leo's facade finally crumbled completely. Mary, they're all lying. Your father paid them to destroy us. But Mary was reading Jennifer's bank statements, seeing the pattern of gradual financial exploitation that Leo had planned for her. That's what you told Jennifer, Mary said quietly. Word for word. I heard the recording. As the officers led Leo away, he made one last desperate appeal. Mary, don't let him control you. This is exactly what he wanted. But Mary was already stepping toward me, away from the man who'd spent 8 months systematically destroying her ability to trust her own judgment. Dad, she whispered, tears finally coming. I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. You have nothing to apologize for, I said, opening my arms as she collapsed against me. You were being manipulated by an expert. How can you forgive me after everything I said to you? I held my daughter, really held her, for the first time in 8 months, because you're my daughter and I love you. That never changed, not even when you couldn't see it. Later, after the police had left and Jennifer had returned to her hotel, Mary and I sat in her kitchen surrounded by the evidence of Leo's crimes. I feel so stupid, she said. Don't. Leo fooled successful, intelligent women repeatedly. His crime wasn't theft. It was making victims blame themselves for his expertise. What happens now? Now you heal, and Leo faces justice, and we rebuild what he tried to destroy. Mary looked at me with eyes that seemed clearer than they'd been in months. Dad? Yes? Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. Outside, the San Diego afternoon sun streamed through windows that had been darkened by deception for too long. For the first time in 8 months, my daughter was truly home. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. During my daughter's wedding, when everyone was celebrating, my grandson whispered to me with horror in his eyes, Grandpa, you have to stop this wedding immediately. I was surprised. Why, child? He told me the shocking truth that shattered the illusion of happiness. 30 minutes later, the police arrived and justice struck like lightning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Wayne looked me up and down as I stepped through Nancy's apartment door, his eyes lingering on my jacket with undisguised disdain. So you're Nancy's dad? Look exactly like she described. Typical suburban pensioner with those traditional views. I extended my hand anyway. Pleasure meeting you, Wayne. He ignored it completely, instead pulling Nancy close against his side like marking territory. My daughter's cheeks flushed pink as she tried to smooth over the moment. Dad, come in. Dinner's almost ready. Nancy's voice carried that forced brightness I remembered from her childhood, when she'd broken something valuable. Wayne had already claimed my usual spot, the blue armchair by the window where I always sat during visits. He spread himself across it like he owned the place, expensive watch catching the light as he gestured dismissively at the room. These old furnishings? He shook his head at Nancy. Sweetheart, we'll definitely need modern updates after the wedding. Leo glanced up from his homework at the kitchen counter, catching my eye with a look that said everything. My 15-year-old grandson had always been perceptive. Dad likes that chair, Leo said quietly. Wayne's laugh was sharp. Well, he'll have to get used to changes. That's what happens when families evolve. Nancy bustled around the kitchen, serving plates with shaking hands. The apartment felt smaller somehow, with Wayne's presence filling every corner. Through the windows, Denver's skyline glittered in the February twilight, but inside the warmth I'd always felt here had chilled. Archie, you still living in that same house? Wayne's tone suggested this was somehow pathetic. Same neighborhood for what, 20 years? 32. I kept my voice level. Ah, he nodded knowingly. Set in your ways. Nancy mentioned you don't like change much. My daughter shot him a warning look, but damage was done. I watched her realize this introduction wasn't going according to plan. The hope in her eyes from when I'd arrived was dimming. During dinner, Wayne dominated conversation, talking about his business consulting work in vague terms that meant nothing. When Nancy tried to mention Leo's recent academic achievements, Wayne steered discussion back to himself. The boy needs more discipline, Wayne declared, not looking at Leo. Kids today lack structure. In my day, we learned respect. Leo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Nancy's knuckles whitened as she gripped her water glass. Leo's a good kid, I said firmly. Wayne's smile never wavered. Of course you'd think so. Grandfathers always see things through rose-colored glasses. By 8:30, I'd cataloged enough red flags to fill a notebook. The way Wayne spoke to Nancy like she was simple. How he criticized everything from her apartment to her cooking. His complete dismissal of Leo's presence, except to criticize. Well, I stood, gathering my jacket. Thank you for dinner, Nancy. She walked me to the door, worry lines creasing her forehead. Dad, I know Wayne can seem... Different people show different sides of themselves, I said carefully. Give things time. But as I kissed her good night, I caught Wayne watching us from his stolen chair, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes like he'd won something. The elevator descended in silence. In the parking garage, I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, engine idling. Through the concrete pillars, Denver's lights blurred together. I needed to warn Nancy. But how do you tell your daughter that her happiness is built on quicksand without becoming the enemy? Sleep came in fragments that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Wayne smirk as he dismissed my handshake. By 7 a.m., I was in my kitchen making coffee with unsteady hands. Nancy called before I'd finished my first cup. Dad, I need to come over. We need to talk. Her voice carried that tight edge I recognized. Anger held barely in check. She was coming to defend him. 40 minutes later, she stood in my kitchen doorway, refusing the chair I'd pulled out. Her work clothes were wrinkled like she'd grabbed them off the floor, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. You hated him? The words shot out before I'd even offered coffee. I could see it on your face. I set down my mug carefully. Nancy, something about Wayne doesn't sit right with me. Here we go again. She began pacing between the counter and window, hands cutting through the air. Dad, you always do this. Remember how you poisoned me against Jason? Made me doubt everything? And he turned out to be perfectly decent. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Jason cheated on you, Nancy. So what? Her voice cracked like breaking glass. At least he wasn't some monster you made him out to be. Wayne is different. He loves me. I watched my daughter unravel, the morning sunlight harsh through the bay window. The frost on my garden was melting, water streaming down the glass like tears. I saw how he treated you last night. How he treated me? Nancy whirled around. He was nervous. Meeting your father for the first time is intimidating, especially when that father has a reputation for driving away every man who comes near his daughter. My hands found the familiar weight of my coffee mug. I've never driven anyone away. Jason left because of you. Jason left because he was sleeping with his secretary. Stop! Nancy slammed her palm against the counter. The sound echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. I won't let you destroy my happiness again. Wayne makes me feel special, wanted. When was the last time you bothered to ask what I needed? The accusation hung between us, sharp as broken china. I thought of all the dinners she'd skipped, all the calls that went to voicemail, all the ways she'd been pulling away since Jason. Nancy, listen to yourself. No, you listen. She grabbed her purse, keys jingling like wind chimes. I'm 42 years old. I don't need Daddy's permission to fall in love. Wayne asked me to marry him, and I said yes. You can either be happy for me or you can keep your judgments to yourself." The words hit like physical blows. I reached for her arm, but she jerked away. "I've made my choice, Dad. Now you make yours. Support me, or lose me." The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the teacups in their cabinet. I stood alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the debris of our relationship. My coffee had gone cold. The newspaper lay folded and unread. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked at something unseen. I sank into the chair Nancy had refused, feeling every one of my 68 years settling into my bones. The silence pressed against my eardrums like diving too deep. She was wrong about Jason. I'd never poisoned her against him. I'd simply asked questions she didn't want to answer, but by the time she'd discovered his affair, the damage was done. She'd stopped trusting my judgment, stopped believing I wanted her happiness, and now here we were again. Same dance, different partner. Except this time, she'd thrown down an ultimatum: support Wayne or lose her forever. I picked up my cold coffee, then set it down untouched. My reflection stared back from the black surface. An old man who'd lost his daughter twice now, once to a cheater, once to his own honesty. The morning stretched ahead, empty as my kitchen. I needed to think, needed space to figure out how to save my daughter without losing her. My keys sat by the door where I'd dropped them last night, when the world still made sense. Time to go somewhere quiet. Time to remember how we'd gotten here. 20 minutes later, I sat on my favorite bench at City Park, watching ducks dive for breakfast in the cold pond. The morning frost was melting under February sun, steam rising from the grass like ghosts of winter. My hands had finally stopped shaking. 8 years. That's how long since Nancy's first marriage imploded, since I'd watched her world crumble because I'd been too polite to push harder against Jason's red flags. She'd been 34 then, glowing with new love after a string of rebellious boyfriends who'd worried me for different reasons. Jason seemed stable, an accountant with a downtown practice, polite manners, steady income. When he proposed after 6 months, I'd actually felt relieved. The warning signs started small. How Jason would redirect Nancy's attention when she talked to other men, even waiters or store clerks. How he'd developed opinions about her friends. Sarah was too loud. Michelle drank too much. Karen filled Nancy's head with feminist nonsense. Gradually, Nancy stopped mentioning their names. I'd tried subtle questions. "Haven't seen Sarah lately? Everything okay?" "Oh, you know how it is, Dad. We're all so busy." But Nancy's laugh had sounded hollow, and she'd changed the subject quickly. By their first anniversary, Jason was choosing Nancy's clothes for parties, explaining they needed to present a professional image for his clients. He'd moved them to a house in Littleton, 40 minutes from family and friends. When I'd visit, Jason would hover, interjecting his own interpretations of Nancy's stories. The final confrontation came when 7-year-old Leo had mentioned Uncle Jason's work friends who visited when Mommy wasn't home. Young voices carry truth like church bells, impossible to ignore once you've heard them ring. I'd found Jason in a Cherry Creek bar 2 nights later with a 26-year-old paralegal from his firm. They hadn't seen me, too absorbed in each other to notice an old man nursing a beer in the corner booth. I'd watched them for 20 minutes, cataloging evidence I didn't want to possess. Telling Nancy had been like defusing a bomb. She'd screamed accusations of jealousy, of wanting to control her life, of never letting her be happy. But when she'd confronted Jason, his denials crumbled under Leo's innocent questions about the pretty lady with yellow hair who brought cookies. The divorce took 8 months. Nancy had moved back to Denver, hollow-eyed and brittle. Leo started having nightmares. I'd helped them rebuild one day at a time, until Nancy's laugh sounded real again, but she'd never forgiven me for being right. A jogger passed, earbuds blocking out the world, and I envied his simple rhythm. Left foot, right foot, no complicated family dynamics to navigate. Wayne's behavior last night mirrored Jason's early patterns. The territorial marking, the subtle dismissals, the way he'd positioned himself as Nancy's interpreter and defender. But this time, Nancy had issued an ultimatum before I'd even voiced concerns. Support me or lose me. Behind me, a maintenance worker gathered fallen branches from the night's wind. Life's debris cleaned up and carted away like it never mattered. But family debris stuck around, composted into resentment and regret. The ducks had finished their diving, now paddling in lazy circles. A mother duck kept her ducklings close, occasionally nudging wanderers back towards safety. Protection looked different from the outside, sometimes like love, sometimes like control. My phone buzzed, text from Leo. "Grandpa, can we talk? Something's weird about Wayne." Smart kid, maybe the smartest of all of us. I stood, brushing frost from my jacket, and scattered my remaining breadcrumbs on the water. The ducks converged eagerly, trusting that what fell from above was nourishment, not poison. Time to listen to the one family member who saw clearly, unclouded by adult longings and ancient grudges. Time to find out what my grandson had noticed that the rest of us were too blind to see. The walk back to my car felt purposeful for the first time since Wayne's handshake snub. Whatever came next, I wouldn't face it alone. Leo's text had given me something I'd been missing all day, hope that I wasn't losing my mind. I spent the afternoon in my back garden, pruning the bare rose bushes that lined the fence. February in Denver meant cutting back to the bone, preparing for spring growth that seemed impossible in the frozen ground. The physical work helped clear the morning's argument from my head, each snip of the shears decisive where my thoughts had been muddled. At 3:30, I heard the familiar thud of Leo's backpack hitting my front porch. He appeared around the corner of the house, still wearing his school uniform, khakis and navy polo that made him look younger than 15. "Granddad, Mom seemed really upset this morning." He picked up a fallen branch without being asked. "Did you two argue about Wayne?" "We had words." I made another cut, watching dead wood fall away. "Your mom's protective of her choices." Leo held the branch while I worked, our routine as comfortable as breathing. We'd been doing yard work together since he could barely hold a rake. "I don't like Wayne either." The words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in all week. "He acts weird when Mom's not around." I paused, pruning shears halfway to the next branch. "What do you mean by weird?" "He goes through our stuff." Leo's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Looks at family photos for a really long time, like he's memorizing them. Always texting someone when he thinks nobody's watching." The shears felt heavy in my hand. "Anything else?" "He has 2 phones, Granddad." "Who needs 2 phones?" A cardinal landed on the fence post, bright red against the gray afternoon. Even the birds seemed to be listening. "When did you notice this?" "Last weekend when Mom went grocery shopping. I was doing homework, and Wayne started looking through the papers on her desk. You know, the ones with bank statements and stuff." Leo shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "When he saw me watching, he acted like he was just tidying up." The sun was setting behind the Rockies, temperature dropping fast. I gathered my tools, motioning Leo toward the house. "Come on, let's make some hot chocolate." In my kitchen, Leo pulled out his favorite mug, the Denver Broncos one I'd bought him 3 Christmases ago. I heated milk on the stove while he sat at the counter, backpack unzipped, homework forgotten. "There's something else." He wrapped his hands around the warm mug when I handed it to him. "Wayne asked Mom about your house, how much it's worth, whether you have a good pension. Mom told him it wasn't his business, but he kept pushing." I leaned against the counter, my own mug untouched. "Did your mom seem bothered by the questions?" "Yeah, but she made excuses. Said he was just curious because he cares about family." Leo took a sip, then looked up at me with eyes too old for his face. "Something about him feels wrong, Granddad. Like he's acting all the time." Outside my kitchen window, streetlights were flickering on along the quiet Cherry Creek neighborhood. Normal Friday evening. Normal houses with normal families having normal problems. But sitting across from my grandson, I felt the weight of something abnormal pressing against us. "Leo, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Don't let Wayne know you've been watching him. Keep doing your homework. Be polite, but pay attention. Can you do that?" Leo nodded solemnly. "Are you going to tell Mom?" "Not yet. Right now, it's just observations. But if you see anything else..." "I'll tell you first." He finished his hot chocolate and packed up his homework, mentioning a sleepover at his friend Marcus's house. I walked him to the door, watching him trudge down the sidewalk with his overstuffed backpack, looking like any other teenager heading to spend Friday night playing video games and eating pizza. But he wasn't any other teenager. He was my ally now, my eyes and ears in a situation I couldn't navigate alone. I stood in my doorway until Leo disappeared around the corner, then closed the door against the February cold. The empty hot chocolate mugs sat on my counter, steam still rising from mine. For the first time since meeting Wayne, I didn't feel completely powerless. The house felt enormous after Leo left, every sound amplified by silence. I washed our mugs slowly, running hot water longer than necessary, postponing the moment when I'd have to face the evening alone with my thoughts. 8 o'clock found me pacing the hallway, stopping at the gallery of family photos that lined the wall like a timeline of happier years. Nancy at 5, gap-toothed and grinning on her first day of school. Nancy at 18, cap and gown, the whole world ahead of her. Nancy at 26, radiant in her first wedding dress, Jason beaming beside her like he'd won the lottery. I'd been proud that day. Jason seemed stable after Nancy's string of rebellious boyfriends, musicians and artists who'd made my stomach churn with worry. An accountant felt safe, responsible. How wrong I'd been. I moved to the living room, settling into my late wife's favorite armchair. Helen had always said I worried too much about Nancy, that our daughter needed to make her own mistakes to learn from them. Trust her judgment, Archie. She's stronger than you think. But Helen had been gone 3 years now, and Nancy's judgment seemed to be getting worse, not better. I made myself a cup of tea I wouldn't drink, just needing the ritual of boiling water, steeping leaves, adding honey. Outside my kitchen window, the neighbor's motion light kept flickering on and off as raccoons raided garbage cans. Normal suburban problems. Normal suburban night. Nothing felt normal anymore. Leo's observations played on repeat in my head. 2 phones, going through financial documents, questions about my house value and pension. The pieces formed a pattern I recognized from crime shows Nancy used to love watching. Someone casing a target, gathering intelligence, preparing for something bigger. But what if I was wrong? What if Wayne was just awkward, just curious about the family he was marrying into? What if my distrust of him came from the same place that had made me suspicious of Jason, an old man's jealousy that another man could make his daughter happy? I walked to Nancy's old bedroom, now converted to my office and spare room. Her high school photos still decorated one wall. Prom queen, debate team captain, soccer star. She'd been fearless then, ready to conquer the world. When had she started choosing men who diminished her instead of celebrated her strengths? My phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls from Nancy. No apology for the morning's harsh words. No bridge offered across the chasm that Wayne had already begun digging between us. The smart thing would be to call her, apologize for interfering, promise to support her choices, keep the peace, stay in her life. But Leo's worried face kept surfacing in my memory. The way he'd whispered about Wayne's strange behavior, like he was afraid someone might overhear. Kids were honest about people in ways adults had trained themselves not to be. I thought about hiring a private investigator, but dismissed the idea immediately. Nancy would see it as the ultimate betrayal if she found out. More evidence of her paranoid father trying to control her life. Back in the living room, I stood at the window overlooking the street where Leo had walked to his friend's house. Porch lights created pools of warmth in the February darkness. Inside those houses, families were settling in for the evening, homework and television and ordinary conversations about ordinary days. I envied them their simplicity. Helen's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let someone fall. Be ready to catch them, but don't prevent the lesson. Maybe that's what Nancy needed. Space to discover Wayne's true nature on her own timeline, without her father's interference clouding her judgment. If I pulled back, stopped asking questions, stopped radiating disapproval, maybe she'd start seeing what Leo and I had already noticed. And if Wayne was planning something, financially or otherwise, maybe my distance would make him overconfident, careless, reveal his hand too early. The grandfather clock in my hallway chimed 11:30. Time for bed, time to let the day's worries settle into whatever wisdom sleep might bring. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, my decision made. I'd give Nancy the space she'd demanded. Stop voicing concerns. Stop asking pointed questions. Let Wayne think he'd won. But I wouldn't stop watching. And neither would Leo. Sometimes love meant stepping back, but it never meant giving up. The week that followed taught me the weight of strategic silence. I kept busy with routine, grocery shopping, library visits, coffee with old colleagues from the engineering firm, normal activities that felt anything but normal, while Nancy's angry words echoed in my memory. She didn't call, neither did I. Leo texted twice, once to say Wayne had been asking more questions about family finances, once to report another mysterious phone call taken on the balcony. I responded with careful encouragement to keep observing, but stay safe. By Wednesday, the silence became unbearable. Nancy called that evening, her voice carefully neutral. Dad, I was thinking maybe we could have dinner Friday, all three of us. Start over. I knew what start over meant. Except Wayne. Stop asking uncomfortable questions. Pretend my instincts were wrong. That sounds nice, sweetheart. Where did you have in mind? Mountain View Diner, 7 o'clock. The choice surprised me. Mountain View was our place, where I'd taken Nancy for birthday dinners as a child, where Leo and I still went for pancakes on Saturday mornings. Family territory. Friday evening found me arriving 20 minutes early, choosing a booth along the back wall where I could watch the entrance. The restaurant buzzed with its usual crowd, families celebrating small victories, couples on budget-friendly dates, teenagers sharing milkshakes and dreams. Nancy and Wayne arrived precisely at 7, Wayne immediately taking charge of the situation like a general surveying conquered territory. Archie, good to see you again. His handshake was firm, possessive, meant to establish dominance. Nancy picked a charming little place, very nostalgic. The word dripped with condescension. I slid into the booth, letting them choose their positions. Wayne positioned himself across from me, Nancy trapped between us like a referee in a boxing match. So, Wayne spread his menu with theatrical flourish. Let's order the best this establishment has to offer. Archie, what do you recommend for a man with expensive tastes? I kept my voice level. The meatloaf's good. Been getting it here for 20 years. Meatloaf? Wayne's laugh carried no warmth. How wonderfully traditional. Nancy, darling, what about the salmon? I'm sure it's adequate. Our waitress, Betty, had been working here since Nancy was in elementary school. She recognized the tension immediately, her professional smile tightening as Wayne ordered wine from their limited selection, complaining loudly about vintage options. Dad, Nancy jumped in quickly, Wayne and I have been talking about the wedding, making some exciting plans. The venue alone will cost $12,000, Wayne announced, like money spent on Nancy was money invested in him. Plus catering, flowers, photographer, we're looking at $30,000 minimum for a proper celebration. The number hung between us like a challenge. I sipped my coffee, waiting. Of course, Wayne continued. Nancy's salary at the marketing firm is decent, but hardly sufficient for the kind of wedding she deserves. A woman should feel like a princess on her special day. Nancy's cheeks flushed pink. Wayne, we talked about keeping things modest. Nonsense, Wayne's voice carried across 3 nearby tables. I won't have my bride settling for some budget ceremony. Archie, we know you're well off. Nancy told me about your pension and savings. Surely you want your only daughter to have a memorable wedding. The manipulation was textbook. Public setting to prevent scenes. Emotional pressure through Nancy's happiness. Financial assumptions based on second-hand information. I felt every eye in the restaurant assessing our little drama. I'm not obligated to fund your wedding. Wayne's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Then the charming smile returned, bigger and faker than before. What a miser. Nancy, does your dad really want you to be happy? Or is he one of those fathers who can't stand seeing another man provide for his daughter? Nancy looked stricken, caught between loyalty and embarrassment. Around us, conversations had quieted. Betty approached our table with forced cheer, clearly hoping to diffuse the situation. Everything okay here? Ready to order? Wayne ordered the most expensive entrée on the menu. Nancy asked for soup, claiming she wasn't very hungry. I stuck with my usual meatloaf, wondering how many more family dinners would be ruined by the man sitting across from me. Through the restaurant's large windows, Denver's skyline glittered against the February night. The mountains beyond stood eternal and patient, having witnessed countless human dramas play out in their shadow. I thought about Helen, about what she would do in this moment, about Nancy's happiness versus her safety, about the difference between love and enabling. Fine, I said quietly. I'll help with the wedding costs. Wayne's victory smile was immediate and graceless. Nancy reached across the table to squeeze my hand, relief flooding her face. Thank you, Dad. This means everything to me. But as Wayne launched into detailed plans for flowers and music and open bars, I noticed Nancy's smile never quite reached her eyes. She'd gotten what she'd asked for, but somehow it didn't feel like winning. When the check came, Wayne made a show of reaching for his wallet before letting me pick up the tab. His expensive watch caught the light as he gestured, probably worth more than most people's monthly salary. Walking to our cars in the parking lot, Nancy hugged me goodbye with whispered thanks. Wayne shook my hand again, his grip slightly too firm, his smile slightly too bright. You're a good man, Archie. Family first, right? I watched them drive away, Nancy's profile rigid in the passenger seat. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo. How did dinner go? I typed back. We'll talk tomorrow. But sitting in my car in the Mountain View parking lot, I already knew tomorrow's conversation would be different. Tonight had shown me something important. Wayne wasn't just after Nancy's happiness. He was after something much more valuable. The month between that restaurant confrontation and Nancy's wedding passed like a slow-motion avalanche. Inevitable, destructive, impossible to stop. I'd kept my distance as promised, watching from the sidelines while Wayne orchestrated what he called the perfect celebration. Rocky Peak's venue sat perched above Denver like a crystal palace, all gleaming windows and mountain views. Nancy had dreamed of this place since she was 12, cutting pictures from bridal magazines and pasting them in scrapbooks I'd thought she'd forgotten. She looked radiant walking down the aisle, her dress catching afternoon light like spun silver. For those few minutes, watching her face glow with happiness, I almost convinced myself I'd been wrong about Wayne. Almost. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of traditional vows and camera flashes. Wayne played his part perfectly. The devoted groom, the successful businessman, the man who'd won Nancy's heart. Only I seemed to notice how his smile never quite reached his eyes. But it was the reception where Wayne's true nature emerged. My assigned seat told the whole story. Table 12, tucked in the back corner with Nancy's great-aunt Muriel and some distant cousins I'd met twice. The head table stretched across the front like a stage, Wayne holding court, while Nancy tried to include everyone in conversations he consistently redirected toward himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Wayne's voice boomed across the reception hall as he stood with champagne flute raised. I want to thank everyone who came to celebrate with Nancy and me today. The room quieted. Expectant faces turned toward the head table. Nancy beamed up at her new husband, radiant with joy. Special thanks to those who believed in our love from the beginning, Wayne continued, his gaze deliberately skipping over my table. Some people said we were moving too fast, that love at our age was foolish. I felt my jaw tighten. Around me, Nancy's work colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But Nancy and I proved that when you know, regardless of what naysayers think. Wayne's eyes found mine across the crowded room. Here's to new beginnings and leaving old prejudices behind. The applause was polite, but scattered. Even from my distant table, I could see Nancy's forced smile as she processed her husband's public humiliation of her father on their wedding day. Leo appeared at my elbow, sliding into the empty chair beside me. Granddad, are you okay? Fine. I loosened my tie, suddenly feeling like it was choking me. Just tired. But I wasn't fine. Watching Wayne parade Nancy around the dance floor while her guests whispered behind their hands, seeing her try to smooth over his calculated rudeness, recognizing the pattern I'd witnessed with Jason, none of it was fine. Wayne's friends concerned me most. 3 men in expensive suits who'd arrived together and spent the entire reception huddled in conversation, occasionally glancing toward Nancy with expressions that made my skin crawl. They didn't look like business colleagues or old friends. They looked like people who worked in shadows. May I have this dance? Wayne's voice carried clearly across the room as the band began playing their special song. Nancy melted into his arms like she was exactly where she belonged. But as they swayed together in the center of the dance floor, Wayne's eyes remained fixed on me over Nancy's shoulder. His smile was triumphant, predatory, the look of a man who'd just closed the biggest deal of his career. Leo gripped my arm suddenly. Granddad, I need some air. Too stuffy in here. I watched him weave between tables toward the outdoor terrace, his face pale despite the warm reception hall lighting. Wedding receptions were overwhelming for introverts, but Leo had seemed fine all afternoon. The first dance ended to enthusiastic applause. Wayne spun Nancy once more, then dipped her dramatically, playing to the crowd like a performer who lived for applause. When I looked toward the terrace doors, Leo was nowhere to be seen. Leo burst through the terrace doors like he'd seen a ghost, scanning the reception hall frantically before his eyes locked on mine. He pushed through the crowd of wedding guests, his formal shirt untucked, face flushed with something between panic and rage. "Granddad!" He reached my table breathless. "We have to stop this wedding right now." The urgency in his voice cut through the reception noise like a fire alarm. I stood immediately, catching his arm to steady him. "Leo, what are you talking about?" "His real name is William Harrison," Leo's words tumbled out in a whisper shout. "He's a criminal. I heard him talking to those men outside. He was bragging about it." My blood turned to ice water. "That's impossible." "He was laughing about taking Mom's money and disappearing." Leo's eyes were wide with terror. "Granddad, he's done this before. In Phoenix, in Seattle. He marries women and steals everything." The reception continued around us. Laughter, clinking glasses, the band launching into another romantic ballad. But I felt like I'd been dropped into a nightmare where everything looked normal, but nothing was real. "Are you absolutely certain about what you heard?" Leo nodded frantically. "I went outside because it was hot in here, and those weird guys Wayne came with were smoking by the big planters. Wayne was with them, and I heard him say, 'William Harrison has 3 warrants out for his arrest, but Wayne Harlan is clean as a whistle.'" My legs felt unsteady. I gripped the back of my chair, trying to process information that confirmed every instinct I'd ignored. "What else did you hear?" "They were talking about the honeymoon, about how Mom keeps all her banking information in her purse, how easy it'll be to drain her accounts while they're in Mexico." Leo's voice cracked. "One of the guys asked about the old man's money. They meant you, Granddad. Wayne said once the wedding was done, he'd have access to everything." The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Wayne's questions about my house value, his insistence on an expensive wedding funded by my accounts, his rush to marry Nancy despite knowing her less than 6 months. I'd been watching a long con unfold in real time. "Where are they now?" I looked toward the terrace doors. They went back inside through the side entrance when the cake cutting started. Wayne's acting normal, but those guys are watching everyone like they're planning something. Across the reception hall, Nancy was cutting wedding cake with Wayne's hands covering hers on the knife handle. She looked blissfully happy, feeding him a bite while photographers captured every smile, every laugh, every moment of joy that was built on lies. "We have to tell her," Leo whispered, "right now, before they leave for their honeymoon tomorrow." But how do you tell a bride on her wedding day that her new husband is a professional con artist? How do you explain that everything she believes about her future is a carefully constructed fraud designed to destroy her financially and emotionally? I watched Wayne scan the room, his gaze stopping when he noticed Leo and me in intense conversation. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the charming groom mask slipping just enough to reveal something calculating underneath. "He's watching us," I murmured to Leo. "Yeah, he does that. He's always watching, always listening." Leo's voice carried a maturity that broke my heart. "Granddad, what do we do? Mom will never believe us without proof." Wayne whispered something to Nancy, who glanced our way with a concerned expression. Then he began walking toward our table, his public smile bright as stage lights. "Leo! Archie! Come join us for cake." His voice boomed across the reception hall. Family should be together for the important moments. But there was steel behind his jovial invitation, and I recognized it for what it was. A command, not a request. Wayne was pulling us back into his orbit before we could become a problem. The trap was closing around Nancy, around all of us, and we were running out of time to stop it. Wayne's approach across the reception hall felt like watching a predator close in on prey. I had maybe 30 seconds before he reached our table. 30 seconds to decide how to handle information that could save or destroy my daughter. "Act normal," I whispered to Leo. "Don't let him know you heard anything." Leo straightened his tie and forced a smile, but I could see his hands trembling. My 15-year-old grandson was holding family-destroying secrets, and Wayne was walking directly toward us, with that politician's grin plastered across his face. "There's my favorite in-laws." Wayne's voice carried that false heartiness I'd learned to recognize. "Nancy was worried you two looked lonely over here." Behind him, Nancy approached with cake plates, her wedding dress rustling against reception hall chairs. She looked concerned, probably wondering why her father and son were having such an intense conversation during her celebration. "Just telling Leo about the good old days," I managed, standing to accept Wayne's aggressive handshake. "You know how teenagers love family history." "Of course they do." Wayne's grip lingered too long, his eyes searching my face for signs of suspicion. "Though sometimes the past is better left buried, don't you think?" The double meaning wasn't lost on me. This was a warning, delivered with a smile while wedding guests danced around us. Nancy reached our table with cake, still glowing with happiness. "Dad, you look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "Just tired, sweetheart." "Big day." But I wasn't tired. I was terrified. Every minute Wayne remained married to Nancy was another minute he had legal access to her life, her accounts, her trust. Leo's revelation had turned the wedding reception into a countdown to disaster. "Actually, Nancy, I was hoping to speak with you privately for a moment." I kept my voice casual, grandfatherly. "Nothing serious, just wanted to tell you how proud your mother would have been today." Wayne's hand found Nancy's waist immediately. "How sweet. But Nancy's been on her feet all day greeting guests. Maybe save the family moments for later." "Dad, Wayne's right. I should get back to everyone." Nancy's smile was apologetic, but firm. "We can talk tomorrow before we leave for the airport." Tomorrow would be too late. By tomorrow, they'd be on their way to Mexico, where Wayne could disappear with Nancy's money, leaving her stranded in a foreign country with no resources and no idea who she'd actually married. "Nancy, please. It's important." Something in my tone must have broken through her wedding day euphoria, because she paused, really looking at me for the first time all evening. "What kind of important?" Wayne's grip on her waist tightened almost imperceptibly. "Archie, whatever family business you have can surely wait until—" "It's about your safety," I said quietly, directly to Nancy. "About things you need to know before you leave the country." The words hung in the reception hall air. Like smoke from a fire, everyone could smell, but nobody could see. Around us, wedding guests continued celebrating. The band played romantic ballads. Photographers captured happy moments. But our small circle had gone deadly quiet. Nancy's face changed, wedding joy replaced by growing alarm. "Dad, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" Wayne stepped closer to Nancy, his body language shifting from charming host to protective barrier. "Your father's had a long day, darling. Maybe he's confused." "I'm not confused." I met Wayne's eyes directly. "And neither is Leo." At the mention of Leo's name, Wayne's mask slipped completely. For just a second I saw the real man underneath, cold, calculating, dangerous. Then the politician's smile returned, but it was too late. Nancy had seen it too. "What does Leo have to do with anything?" Her voice carried new uncertainty. "Dad, what's going on?" "5 minutes," I said. "Give me 5 minutes alone, and I'll explain everything." Wayne moved to block any path between Nancy and me. "Absolutely not. Nancy, your father has been trying to sabotage our relationship from day one. Don't let him poison your wedding day with more paranoid." "Let him talk," Nancy said suddenly. "Wayne, just let him talk." It was the first time all evening she'd contradicted her new husband in public, and from the way Wayne's jaw clenched, it wouldn't be the last time tonight that carefully constructed plans began falling apart. Nancy followed me to the venue's small preparation room, her wedding dress rustling with irritation. Through the closed door, reception laughter felt like mockery of what I was about to destroy. "Dad, make this quick." She checked her watch, every gesture screaming impatience. "People will notice I'm gone." "Nancy, Leo overheard something terrible about Wayne." Her face hardened instantly. "This is impossible. Not today, not on my wedding day. His real name is William Harrison. He's wanted by the FBI. "Stop it!" Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "You're just jealous that I found someone who makes me happy. This is exactly what you did with Jason." But Jason had been weak, not criminal. I pulled out my phone, searching quickly for the information Leo had given me. Look up William Harrison, 45 years old, wanted for fraud. Nancy snatched her phone from her purse, fingers flying over the screen. I'll prove you wrong right now. I'll show you that Wayne is exactly who he says. Her words died as the first image loaded. Wayne's face stared back from a police mugshot, the same charming smile now looking predatory under harsh booking lights. Below the photo, bold text, Wanted, William Harrison, 45. Multiple counts, fraud, and embezzlement. Nancy's hands began trembling. She scrolled down, finding more photos, more charges, news articles about victims whose stories mirrored her own whirlwind romance. Phoenix widow loses life savings to marriage scammer. Seattle teacher victimized by professional con artist. FBI manhunt continues for William Harrison, accused of targeting single mothers. The phone slipped from Nancy's nerveless fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. Her wedding dress suddenly looked like a costume from a play where she'd been the only actor who didn't know the script. Oh no, her voice was barely a whisper. This really is him. What have I done? She collapsed into the preparation room's chair, $30,000 worth of wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. Her carefully styled hair began falling as she buried her face in her hands. How could I be so blind? You tried to warn me, and I called you paranoid. I moved closer, wanting to comfort her, but unsure if she'd accept it. Nancy, none of this is your fault. He's a professional criminal. This is what he does for a living. But I defended him against you. I made you pay for our wedding. Tears were ruining her makeup, black mascara tracks marking her cheeks like war paint. I chose a criminal over my own father. Through the window, Colorado's mountains stood eternal and patient, having witnessed countless human dramas play out in their shadow. But this felt different, more personal, like the peaks themselves were holding their breath. What if he runs? What if he figures out we know? Nancy's voice carried new terror. What if he hurts someone? I knelt beside her chair, taking her trembling hands in mine. We're calling the police right now. He won't hurt anyone else. She looked up at me through tear-clumped lashes, and for a moment I saw my little girl again, the one who'd run to Daddy when nightmares made sleep impossible. I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. You listened when it mattered most? I handed her my handkerchief, the same one Helen had embroidered with my initials 20 years ago. That's all that counts. Nancy wiped her eyes, then straightened in her chair with determination I recognized from her childhood. The same look she'd worn when learning to ride her bike, refusing to quit despite scraped knees. What do we do when we go back out there? We act normal. We wait for help to arrive. I dialed 911, Nancy listening as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. Wanted fugitive. Active wedding reception. Rocky Peaks venue. Officers en route. How long? Nancy asked when I hung up. 20 minutes. She stood, checking herself in the preparation room mirror, fixing smeared makeup with steady hands. The frightened bride was gone, replaced by a survivor. Then we'd better get back before he comes looking. Nancy leaned against my shoulder as fresh tears started, and I remembered holding her this way when she was 7 and her pet hamster died. Some things never change between fathers and daughters. He fooled everyone, sweetheart. That's how professional con artists work. But you saw through him immediately. She pulled back, looking at me with wonder and regret mixed together. Why didn't I trust your instincts? Because you're supposed to make your own choices. That's what growing up means. She laughed bitterly, gesturing at her elaborate wedding dress. Some choice. I married a wanted criminal. We can fix this, I said firmly, but we need to act now before he realizes anything's wrong. Nancy nodded, wiping her face with my handkerchief. The police, when will they get here? 15 minutes, maybe 20. Can you hold it together that long? I have to. She stood up straighter, and I saw the steel in her spine that had carried her through single motherhood and career challenges. What's our story for why I was gone? Bathroom emergency. Wedding dress complications. Whatever sounds normal. She was quiet for a moment, staring at her phone screen where Wayne's mugshot still glowed like an accusation. Dad, what if he tries to run when the police show up? Let them handle it. That's their job. What if his friends are criminals too? Those weird guys he brought. I'd been wondering the same thing. We'll stay close to Leo. Keep him safe. Nancy picked up her phone, scrolling through the criminal records again. Listen to this. Harrison typically targets recently divorced women with assets, using romance and rushed marriage proposals to gain access to finances. That's exactly what he did to me. Stop reading that, I said gently. It'll just make you feel worse. No, I need to see all of it. I need to understand what almost happened. Her voice was getting stronger with each revelation. Look, victim in Phoenix lost her house, retirement savings, and custody deposits for her children's college funds. That could have been me. Outside the preparation room, wedding music continued playing. Our absence had been noted, but not yet questioned. Nancy, we should go back soon. She nodded, taking one last look in the mirror. The bride who'd entered this room was gone forever, replaced by someone harder, wiser, more careful. How do I face him knowing what I know? The same way you faced every other challenge in your life, with grace. She squeezed my hand. I can't believe I almost lost you over him. You didn't lose me. You never could. Nancy straightened her shoulders, smoothing her wedding dress one final time. Okay, let's go pretend everything's normal while we wait for the FBI to arrest my husband. Just remember, he's good at reading people. Don't give him any reason to suspect. She opened the door to sounds of laughter and clinking glasses, the reception in full swing. Wayne's voice carried across the room, holding court with some story that had guests laughing appreciatively. There's my beautiful bride, he called out as Nancy appeared. I was starting to worry. Just freshening up, Nancy replied smoothly. You know how these old dresses can be. Wayne wrapped his arm possessively around her waist, and I watched Nancy force herself not to flinch. Her acting skills were better than I'd expected. Your father looks tired, Wayne observed, his tone suggesting this was somehow my fault. Maybe all this excitement is too much for him. Dad's fine, Nancy said firmly. Aren't you, Dad? I nodded, playing my part in this suddenly deadly charade. Around us, wedding guests continued celebrating, completely unaware that the groom was a wanted criminal. My phone buzzed with a text. Units approaching venue. Maintain normal appearance. The countdown had begun. 20 minutes of acting normal felt like 20 hours. Nancy played her part perfectly, dancing with Wayne, cutting cake, accepting congratulations from guests who had no idea they were celebrating a lie. Leo appeared at my elbow during the band's slow songs. Granddad, is it happening soon? Very soon, I squeezed his shoulder. You did good, kiddo. You saved your mom. Through the venue's large windows, I spotted the first police car pulling into the parking lot, without lights or sirens. Professional, discreet, exactly what the situation required. Nancy saw them too. Her smile never wavered, but I caught her almost imperceptible nod. 2 uniformed officers entered through the main doors, moving with the casual confidence of men who'd done this many times before. They approached our family table, where Wayne was regaling guests with another story about his business success. Excuse me, sir. The lead officer's voice was polite but firm. Wayne Harlan? That's me? Wayne's politician smile was bright as stage lights. Officers, is everything all right? I hope we're not too loud for the neighbors. We'd like to speak with you privately, sir. Of course. Happy to help. Wayne started to follow them toward the venue's entrance, still playing the cooperative citizen. But the second officer remained close behind, hand resting casually near his handcuffs. They'd done their homework. Near the venue entrance, away from most guests but still visible to our table, the conversation shifted. The lead officer produced a tablet, showing Wayne something that made his confident posture crumble. William Harrison, the officer's voice carried clearly across the now quiet reception, you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement across multiple states. Wayne's mask finally fell away completely. This is impossible. I'm Wayne Harlan. I just got married. Sir, we have fingerprints from the wine glasses, multiple outstanding warrants. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. That's when Wayne's survival instincts kicked in. He bolted toward the terrace doors, wedding guests scattering like startled birds. But the second officer was already moving, tackling Wayne before he reached the exit. The wrestling match lasted maybe 10 seconds before Wayne was face down on the polished floor, hands cuffed behind his back, expensive tuxedo rumpled and torn. You have the right to remain silent. As they hauled Wayne to his feet, his eyes found mine across the reception hall, burning with fury and hatred. You did this, old man, he screamed, struggling against the handcuffs. You destroyed everything. You'll pay for this. But his threats felt empty now, the desperate rage of a cornered animal. Nancy stepped forward, addressing the confused wedding guests with remarkable composure. I need you all to know what really happened here today. The man I married is a wanted criminal who was planning to steal my money and disappear. My father and son saved me from the worst mistake of my life. Some guests gasped, others pulled out phones to record, but most just stared in stunned silence. I walked over to Leo, pulling him forward. This young man is the real hero. He overheard the truth and had the courage to speak up. Leo blushed but stood straighter, accepting handshakes and praise from guests who were still processing the evening's dramatic turn. As they led Wayne out in handcuffs, his 3 suspicious friends had already vanished, probably out the back exits the moment they'd spotted police cars. Nancy removed her wedding ring and handed it to one of the officers. Evidence, she said simply. The reception hall fell quiet, except for the soft background music that felt absurdly cheerful after such drama. Wedding decorations that had been beautiful an hour ago now looked like props from a play that had ended badly. Leo moved to stand between Nancy and me, and we watched through the windows as Wayne was loaded into a police car, his shouting muffled by closed doors and bulletproof glass. Is it really over? Nancy asked. It's over, I confirmed, putting my arms around both my daughter and grandson. We're safe now. The police car pulled away, carrying Wayne back to face justice for his crimes. Around us, wedding guests were gathering their things, offering support and expressing amazement at the evening's revelations. But I was focused on my family. 3 generations united by crisis, stronger now than we'd been in years. Outside the venue windows, the sun was setting behind Colorado's mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A beautiful ending to an ugly day. Justice served, family protected, truth revealed. Sometimes that's all an old man can ask for. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.